What's up, Voracious James here, and today I want to talk about something that's been in the news a lot. I'm sure you've seen it on CNN's front page, I'm sure you've probably seen it in your local newspaper. If you pay any attention to news media, I'm sure you've heard about the opioid addiction crisis that is facing our nation. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who is a medical correspondent for CNN, had a town hall with Anderson Cooper, I believe it was last week, to discuss the opioid crisis in America, where they clearly blamed doctors for this crisis. First, a little bit of back history. In the late 90s, the VA started treating pain as the fifth vital sign. Pain, now, in my opinion, pain is not a vital sign. Vital sign is temperature, heartbeat, breathing. Those are vital signs. Pain's not a vital sign. You can be perfectly healthy, but also be in pain. But anyways, so in the late 90s, the VA started treating pain as a vital sign. And then in 2001, that became standard practice. That's why when you go to an ER, they ask you, what is your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? That whole thing started with this, with treating pain as a vital sign. So there was this aggressive push to start treating pain because some doctors, not all doctors, felt that pain was being undertreated in our country. Now let's get into the politics of this. In 1986, there was a study done by Dr. Russell Portnoy, I believe his name was. He also co-founded the American Pain Foundation. His 1986 paper was on 36 patients that were on opioid pain therapy for non-cancer pain. And he concluded that opiate pain maintenance therapy was perfectly safe and a humane approach to patients with pain who have no history of substance abuse. That they can take opiates or opioids for many, many, many years and not become addicted. Now, it wasn't peer-reviewed, which I think any study should be peer-reviewed. If you believe in your science, throw it out to the public for other people to scrutinize it. There is some truth to that. I mean, people who have addictive behavior can become addicted to anything. But let's get one thing out of the way. There's a big misconception when it comes to opiates and addiction. A lot of people equate dependency to addiction, and they're two completely different things. You can be dependent on opiates and not be addicted to opiates. A person who's dependent on opiates, if they stop taking them, they will get opiate withdrawal. They will get sick. They'll have diarrhea. They'll have cold chills, night sweats, restless leg syndrome, chronic sneezing, chronic yawning. The list goes on and on. That just because they are having those physical symptoms of withdrawal does not mean they are addicted. A lot of people confuse that. It's like, oh, he's sick because he doesn't have his opiate. He's an addict. Not necessarily. An addict will continue taking the drug to chase a high. A big difference you can tell between someone who's using opiates for pain versus someone who's using opiates to get high is that the person who's using opiates for pain will stay on the same dose for quite a long time because that dose will provide this analgesic threshold for him. Whereas the addict, his dose will shoot up very high, very fast. Let's say an addict was doctor shopping and he got a prescription for 1 Percocet every 6 hours. Well, he's probably going to be taking 3 or 4 every 6 hours. And then in a couple weeks, that's going to jump up to 10 or 12 every 6 hours. And then in 3 weeks, it's going to be 20. You build a tolerance to these drugs very quickly when you abuse them. People who don't abuse them still build up a tolerance, but the amount of time it takes to build that tolerance is much longer. A legitimate pain patient who's taking a certain amount of pills after 5 years, maybe even 2 years, will need a dose increase to continue getting the same analgesic effect. That doesn't mean they're an addict. Also, pain patients who are being undertreated when their pain is not adequately controlled may take more of their medications and then exhibit drug-seeking behavior similar to an addict. Now, is there an opioid addiction crisis in this country? I don't necessarily know if there's an opioid addiction crisis, but there is definitely an opioid dependency crisis in this country. And Dr. Sanjay Gupta on CNN was quick to blame doctors for this. Because we started treating pain as a fifth vital sign, doctors were pushed to aggressively go after pain and then started prescribing opiates for almost everything. Something where before you might get a strong NSAID, which is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug like Toradol. Now you would get a Vicodin. But who was behind that push? If you really started doing the digging, it seems that Big Pharma pushed this. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm against opiates. I honestly believe, when properly used, opiates are some of the safest painkillers we have available today. Opiates are not going to rot out your liver. Opiates do not rot out your teeth. Opiates do not adversely affect any internal organ. NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, naproxen, also known as Aleve, Toradol, they can cause stomach bleeding, ulcers, kidney failure. Acetaminophen, just 8 grams of that, you'll need a liver transplant. Vioxx, what I believe was causing heart attacks, that was pulled off the market. So yeah, you have a lot of man-made drugs that are much more dangerous in much smaller doses than opiates. Opiates do get a bad rap. They really do. They are kind of a double-edged sword dealing with opiates. On one hand, you have a drug that provides people with immense pain relief that allows them to live out their everyday lives. Without these drugs, they wouldn't be able to function. They wouldn't be able to go to work. They wouldn't be able to take care of their kids, clean their house, because they would be in so much debilitating pain. But on the other hand, you have a drug that can make a person not care about anything else in the world but getting that drug to put them into a sleepy, dreamy high. But what really concerns me with the media's push on this opioid addiction crisis is that we will focus our efforts in the wrong direction. It almost seems like a witch hunt on doctors for practicing medicine. I live in Nevada, and here recently a doctor, in fact just a couple weeks ago, was accused of running a pill mill with a person out of a car dealership. I'll have a link to that article in the description. They mention that in the state of Nevada we have a prescription tracking system. So if someone goes to one doctor and gets a prescription and then goes to another doctor to get a prescription and then to another doctor to get a prescription, a computer system tracks all that, so that prevents them from doctor shopping. Now the system was put in place with the intention of helping addicts, that if they find someone, if someone gets red flagged, that they will offer them treatment, that they will try to help them and give them options. Well, it doesn't really play out like that. If you get red flagged, the pharmacist doesn't offer you treatment. They don't give you options. They just look at you like you're a drug user, or like you're the scum of the earth, that you're worthless, that you're just a junkie, and they send you on your way. They treat you like scum. They don't offer you any options. They don't give you a card for a number to call to seek help. Nothing like that. So its intended purpose, it's just basically used to scrutinize patients. And the DEA is not making it any easier on doctors. The DEA is starting to go after doctors who aggressively tackle pain. And the problem with pain is that it's subjective. There's no real way to measure pain. You have to trust the patient. If someone says they're in pain, you can only take their word that they're in pain. I do think a lot of people were prescribed strong narcotics for pain that they necessarily didn't need strong narcotics for. I think there were a lot of doctors that did prescribe strong narcotics like fentanyl, Oxycontin, hydromorphone, oxymorphone, which is like Opana or Dilaudid, to people where maybe a Vicodin or a Tylenol 3 would have done the trick. And what happened, these people then got dependent on these drugs, not addicted. But since a lot of people don't take the time to research or realize what the difference between a dependency and addiction is, they just think they're addicted. And then the doctor cuts them off and says, you don't need the drug anymore, which you should never do. If you've been on an opiate, if you're taking an opiate multiple times a day for at least 2 weeks, your body is now dependent on that drug, and you should not just discontinue taking that drug. You will go through withdrawal. And what happens when these people, the doctors take away the narcotic, well, they go into withdrawal. And then they get a pill from the friend at the office or from a family member. And they notice when they take that pill, the withdrawal goes away. What do you know? Well, when they can't get the pills anymore from family members or co-workers, they start to buy pills on the street. And when they can't afford to buy pills anymore on the street, then they go to heroin. So how do we fix this problem? One, we got to get them out of the shadows. We can't stigmatize opiate dependency. We need to make a clear distinction between addiction and dependency, and the news is not doing that. We need to make a naloxone or naltrexone, which is the opiate antidote, to say We need to make that readily available. Maybe with every prescription with a strong narcotic, you also get a prescription to naltrexone, just in case. We need to educate pharmacists more. We need to educate pharmacists to be more compassionate to people who do take narcotics. We shouldn't aggressively go after doctors, because that will scare doctors away from prescribing narcotics to people who legitimately need narcotics. We should allow doctors to prescribe methadone, similar to how they can prescribe Suboxone, to opiate addicts. Right now, if you're an opiate addict, you can only get methadone from a methadone clinic. You cannot get methadone prescribed to you for opiate replacement therapy. Doctors can prescribe methadone for pain, but not for opiate replacement therapy. I think right now, some doctors can prescribe Suboxone, which is buprenorphine, which is also an opiate. They can prescribe that for opiate addiction, but for some addicts, Suboxone is not strong enough. They need something stronger, like methadone. And I think if doctors were allowed to prescribe methadone out of their offices for opiate addiction, we would get more people into treatment. Because let's face it, a lot of upper middle class or middle class people are not going to drive down to the worst neighborhoods at 5 a.m. in the morning every day to get their methadone. They're not going to do it. They're not going to risk their reputation, their job, going down to a methadone clinic being seen. If they can confidentially go to their doctor and get a prescription, I think more people would be open to that. I think this will be a subject I'll end up talking about again, just because it's something that's personal to me. But anyways, like I say, the art of debate is dead in this country. I would love you to prove me wrong. Leave comments below. Later.